Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Today, we're going to find out about how you can improve your vision, or your eyes, with lutein, L-U-T-E-I-N, and it also helps the brain. Sichuan University in China, published in PLOS ONE, the scientific journal. We have about 14 other articles as well. Then I'm going to play a clip of who I consider one of the finest investigative journalists of the last 50 years in the United States. She's been practicing for about 20 plus years. 17 of those years was on 60 Minutes, Lara Logan. And she was cheering Ted Koppel's comments on media bias. I think it's important we realize how many good journalists, and there are many, no longer are welcome within the mainstream media, left and right. The left is equally as biased as the right. So where do you get your information? Who do you trust? How do you know what is real? And that's part of what we're going to discuss, and I'd like your input after you hear what she has to say. Now, you won't see her, the only time I ever see her, I've seen her on Tucker Carlson a couple times, because he's not afraid to have people he even disagrees with. At least he gives them a forum. I don't like his style on how he does this, because he interrupts his guests. You should let him talk. But here, Mark Levin, who's very funny, by the way, if you've ever heard his radio show, he is a hoot. But he is also very nationalistic, and I oppose probably 80% of what he stands for. But he's a very smart dude. He is a constitutional lawyer. He's a scholar. And in this, he gives her a forum. So it's her that we're going to be listening to. And then your response. What do you see as the problem with how we get our information? What are some of the solutions you would suggest? How can we be better informed and more honestly informed than what we are today on whether it's vaccines or on, let's say, the truth about the fact that Russia did not involve itself in stealing documents from the Democratic headquarters and giving them to Julian Assange, and that was all a lie. And we told you that and shared the information to prove it. So how do you stop being a part of misinformation? Also, time permitting today, I want to show you about the Chinese mega trawlers stripping the ocean floor. There's a big crisis in the water's fisheries. Half of all fish in the ocean is now being farmed or taken by China with devastating ecological impact. Also, the importance of the rise in solar power. This is one of the most informed, well-done 14-minute presentations on solar that you'll ever see. And also on autism, what we know and what we don't know yet. I think this was a very interesting discussion by Wendy Chung. So we're not going to get to all these things. We'll get to what we can give some time to. But we start with the latest on health and healing. This meta-analysis in a randomized trial add evidence to the previously researched benefits of lutein and zeaxanthin for the eyes, as well as reveal new data concerning carotenoids' positive impact upon your brain structure. Now, when you eat watermelon, red peppers, strawberries, raspberries, tomatoes, you're getting the lutein. You're also getting a pretty good amount of zeaxanthin. These are very good because the macular lutein filters potentially damaging blue light that we're all exposed to from computers and cell phones and even televisions, as well as helps to prevent oxidative damage, thereby aiding in the prevention of age-related macular degeneration and cataracts. That's why you need these things. So this study simply showed between 10 and 20 milligrams, which is not a lot, per day, can make a big difference. And you have 28% greater visual acuity, 26% greater contrast sensitivity than the placebo. And of course, they didn't use a larger dose. Had they, I think that you would have seen even more improvement. This was published in the Journal of Aging Research. From New York University, they found that there is anti-anxiety and antidepressant effects from one single dose of psilocybin, and it persists for years in cancer patients. So what do I mean? According to New York University, following up on their landmark 2016 study, researchers at the NYU Grossman School of Medicine found that a one-time single-dose treatment of psilocybin, that's psilocybin, that's the compound found in psychedelic mushrooms, combined with simple psychotherapy, talk therapy, proves to be associated with significant improvements in emotional and existential distress in cancer patients. These effects persisted nearly 5 years after that single protocol was given. So, this was published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology. And that's important. Something that can, non-harmful, that's natural, that can lower your anxiety and depression, and that leads to decreases in cancer-related demoralization and hopelessness, improved spiritual well-being, improved quality of life. So that's important. Now, I'm working currently with several terminally ill people, and one of the things we discuss, just had this discussion yesterday, is what is your greatest challenge each day? And it's overcoming the fear of death, of the loss of all things, that everything that I valued and treasured, worked hard for, is now going to be gone. And I tried to emphasize this. You let a person talk, however long it takes, let them say what they have to say. And then you take it and break it into pieces. And that way you look at each part. For example, we're all going to die. We're all going to be without what we have worked our life for in most cases. Think of the homes you live in. Someone else will be living in your home or your apartment. I lived in a tiny little apartment in New York for 4 years, and then I lived in a very large and beautiful apartment for 20 years. I was not the first person in either of those apartments. And there had been that one apartment, the larger one, pre-World War II, there had been 3 other tenants before me. So imagine that when you're in the moment, you're not thinking about how long you're going to be someplace. You're thinking about you're in this moment. You're enjoying this moment. And what do we have but this moment? Interesting, I was just speaking to a friend, a longtime friend, who I invited to attend the anti-aging retreat that I did, the clinical study, back in October. I had multiple conversations with this person of why it would be to an advantage to him. And he said, well, you know, I've got so many other things that I've got to get to. And I said, why don't you make your health and your life the single most important thing? All other things can wait. Well, you know, some people expect me to do this. So what? What if you die? Who's going to do it for them then? These are adults. They can do these things on their own. And people just don't pull back and ask themselves, is my life important enough to dedicate some real time to? Can I turn off the cell phone, the telephone, the television, the computer? Can I turn off everything that's a distraction in my life and put my undivided attention on me? 99% of the American public cannot do that. They will have hundreds of excuses, all legitimate in their minds. Also, a new study is out from the University of Pittsburgh that's showing that vitamin D is associated with lower blood pressure, especially if you have children who are overweight, and there's a lot of overweight children. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition reported the reduction in blood pressure, which is good, and increased insulin sensitivity, which is terrific, in children that otherwise might end up with high blood pressure and diabetes. 1,000 to 2,000 units of vitamin D a day for 6 months did that. So that's good. And from Western University, meditation and music can help reverse early memory loss in adults. Meditation and music. And that's terrific. But again, you got to turn off the phone. You have to position your mind for the discipline of silence. Stop looking for something to distract yourself. And suddenly you can improve your memory. This is published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. Good study. And also they found at the University of Canterbury, which is in New Zealand, published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, that micronutrients improve the symptoms of mental conditions long term. So all those micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals you've been taking, they can end up lessening all forms of psychiatric problems. That is something the Orthomolecular Society has been saying for 40 years. From the University of Manchester, which is in the United Kingdom, research shows a surprising health benefits of chewing your food. Scientists have shown that chewing your food properly can boost your mouth's immune system to protect you against illness. That's good. And it's specifically the chewing stimulates the Th17 cells. And the immune system cells are important in protecting against bacterial and fungal infections that are commonly found in your mouth. So, your grandmother or mother were right. Chew your food. For different reasons, but you want healthier bacteria? Then you have to have the Th17 cells, and you're going to have that. The more you chew, the more that is released, and the more immune protection in your mouth you have. And this was published in the peer-reviewed journal Immunity.
It's a shame the way you mess around with your man. It's a shame the way you hurt me. It's a shame the way you mess around with your man. I'm sitting all alone by the
And I have to say that I was cheering when I heard it reported on what Ted Koppel had said, because I thought, wow, finally someone else is standing up and I'm not alone anymore. Because when it's just me, I'm easy to crush, right? But when it's myself and it's Ted Koppel, and there was a former managing editor of the New York Times who came out and said the same thing. They've become the paper of record against Donald Trump. And so what you're seeing is a growing number of figures, and this restores my faith in journalism, because I know these people are there. I know I'm not a Lone Ranger. I know I'm not the only one who remembers what great independent journalism is supposed to look like. I know I'm not the only journalist who's watching in horror as opinion and pejorative language is passed off as fact, where anonymous sources are given complete cover to do political assassinations without any regard for the consequences of what they're doing, where journalists are walking hand in hand with propaganda propaganda groups and pushing forward narratives that are not based in fact, that are not based in honest journalism, that are nothing more, than political targeting, thinly disguised as journalism today. And the best part about all of this, Mark? There's one set of people who are not fooled by any of it. They lack the context very often. They lack a lot of the information to know exactly the extent of how they're being deceived and manipulated, but they know in their guts. And that's the audience, that's the viewers, that's the readers, that's all the people, the length and breadth of this country, in whether they're Democrats or Republicans, who are lining up to have this conversation right now, who know that something is not right. And that's why they're turning away from the news. And that's why they're not watching. And that's why they're frustrated. And that's why there's so little trust and faith in the media these days. And responsibility and accountability begins with us.
Why do you think this is the case? Why do you think one ideology, really one party, is so ubiquitous in newsrooms, whether it's newspapers, whether it's cable TV, whether it's network TV, whatever it is? Is it that this is taught in journalism school, or it's become more of a sort of a social circle, or they hire one another? How do you explain this?
Well, in my experience, there are several parts to this. It's no secret that the vast majority of academic institutions in this country are liberal, right? And for me, I want to be very clear here. I'm an independent thinker, okay? Nobody owns me. I'm not owned by the left, and I'm not owned by the right. Nobody owns me. I want to be very clear about that, because I've been falsely labeled as being politically motivated in any direction, and none of that is true. So what bothers me is that one political ideology dominates almost all of your academic institutions. And that same political ideology dominates all of your newsrooms, almost all of your newsrooms. I mean, let's face it, until Fox News, in television, where did you go if you weren't liberally minded or moderate, if you like? If you wanted to hear an alternative point of view or a conservative point of view, where did you go in television? You didn't go, there was nowhere to go. So Fox News to me is so successful because there are so many Americans saying, hey, I want a different point of view. I want to hear something else. And most people will look at a little, sample of all different kinds of media, especially today.
Is this why Fox News is under attack by CNN and MSNBC?
All right, her most important comments in this half-hour interview were the ones I just gave you, that the media is biased, that people are saying that, well, it's the liberal media. It's not the liberal media. True liberalism, that's what I lived in my entire life until I saw how political and captured it had become by the oligarchs and the deep state and the corporate interest. So we have a corporatocracy in the United States. We have those who have enormous power and those who have no power. And that's why we had this great divide, the gentrification of neighborhoods to the high cost of education, to debtors' prisons. Behind all this has been liberal organizations and conservative organizations, but they're all about making money organizations. Follow the money trail. Who profits from more? Who profits from anything? And you'll see what motivates them. So she's talking about, why can't we just have people reporting the truth? Then let the American public decide what of that truth they wish and don't wish. Using the term progressive was considered anathema to the liberal community because it differentiated that which is a liberal Democrat from that which is a humanistic person seeking the truth. True progressives seek the truth wherever it's at. They don't engage in identity politics. They don't engage in the other, being less than yourself. They're open to dialogue. So when you go onto a campus today and you're told you cannot say certain things, you cannot discuss certain topics, because there will be students who feel threatened by the very concept that you're going to offer them something they didn't know and are not prepared from. They come in bubbles. Now you have whole college bubbles. The college has become just an extension to helicopter parents' belief system that their child should never have to face anything that makes them feel uncomfortable. So everyone's there to be, what, a human pacifier for non-evolved people? So that's what we become. And that is wrong, in my opinion. I want to hear your opinion. Give us a call now, 888-874-4888, 888-874-4888, because I don't trust the left or the right today. I don't trust anything that's corporatized. I don't trust anything where money and profit and power are the underlying foundational progenitors. What makes them tick is holding on to their power. I don't believe in Davos or any of the people that go there who are the most powerful people in the world. We will never question how they made their money, only if they can have the big yachts and the planes to get there. Everything is hypocritical to me when it comes to allowing someone who has not understood what it is to be poor, understood what it is to help another human being who is down to get them back up on their feet. These people don't function at that level. They're all red carpets. Are you as sick as I am? I don't watch them. The Academy Awards and all these shows and the Golden Globes, it's just one massive narcissism spewing itself in front of the public as who's got the biggest, car and who's got the most expensive gown. Or how is that relevant to anything? And why should we care? We shouldn't. Anyhow, I'd like your thoughts. Now, we got something brand new today. This is taking a long time. I'm going to get it up in front of me. We're going to take just one more quick break, and then we'll be right back to share something really exciting with you. Please stay with us. Okay, I worked on this for over a year, but it took a long time to get everything I wanted into the product. It is a brand new product. It just arrived today, and I don't have a lot of it because I don't know if the public likes it or doesn't like it, will accept it or not, but I believe it could be the single most important product I've ever created because of what it does inside the body. It's called nitric stuff, N-I-T-R-I-C, nitric cell stuff. Now, nitric oxide is the key. So what are the ingredients in this nitric cell stuff? Beets, oats, fiber, pomegranates, guar, cacao, oranges, rice, hull, grapes, blueberries, organic prunes, goji, acai, rhubarb, spinach, kale, watercress, celery, cilantro, spirulina, lemons, grapefruit, oranges, and watermelon. Yep, this is it. There's, zero saturated fat, trans fat, none, no cholesterol, low sodium, a good amount of fiber, but I didn't really make this for fiber or protein. I made this because, and it's high in potassium, by the way, 224 milligrams of potassium per serving, but I wanted this because I want your let's say I can't make any claims. I'll simply say that of all the things happening in your body, everything happening in your body is based upon one thing happening in your body. One thing's got to go right for everything else to go right. And so that's why I believe that we need nitric oxide in our body. And this nitrous oxide comes from natural sources. And so I got the best of the natural sources. And it's delicious tasting, and it's not expensive. And I have just 1,000 bottles. That's it. In fact, I don't even have 1,000 bottles. 254 bottles goes to WBI, so we can get them out there. It's just arrived today. It's only $59.99. So if you want something, and you can look it up. Just, you know what you do? Look up nitric oxide producing products. Beets is number 1. Pomegranate number 2. Cacao number 3. I've got it all right there in descending order of the best you can put in your body. So this is the gold standard, the Rolls Royce, the best you can put in there because I know what it does. The science is overwhelming what it does inside your body. So it doesn't just taste great. It is great. It is extraordinarily important for you. Now, if I told you what I know it exactly does, and especially for men, the phones would ring. I'm just letting you know that you can Google any of these and see the science on them The science is all there. So I just put it all together. This is the only one of its kind. It's called nitric cell stuff. Nitric, N-I-T-R-I-C, nitric cell stuff. Call this number. There's about 700 bottles left. If I see that people like it, I'll put it back in for another order. It'll take about 6 weeks to get more. 877-627-5065. 877-627-5065. And athletes, you really benefit from that. Men who are having some difficulties in life, you really, really benefit from it. Women who want to help your, well, again, I don't want to make any statements, claims. Let's just say this. If I was a woman 40 years and older, I would make sure every morning I had this in my smoothie. Nitric cell stuff. Call 877-627-5065. From the time I create a product till the time it actually arrives is generally a year to a year and a half. I've just brought you out, in the last 2 weeks, I brought you out the dog formula. That goes on top of your dog food. I also brought you out the detox capsules and the de-stress capsules. So you're getting a whole lot of new stuff right now. 877-627-5065. The media, where we get our information, why we shouldn't be trusting either the left or right, liberal conservative media, because unless you can do your homework, unless you can independently verify that what you're being given, think of the consequences of accepting it as is from left and right. Libya had to be destroyed. That was Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, who won the Nobel Prize for Peace and yet completely destroyed a nation. Syria, Assad didn't use gas. All the independent reports show that, in fact, the UN owns a commission inspecting found that that was the terrorists we were funding. Vietnam, and all the false flags. Afghanistan, we're still there 18 years later. Why? Everything, vaccines, you need them. They're safe and effective. Why? Why don't we challenge these? Why do we accept what authority figures tell us, left or right, without challenge? That's the question I'm asking you. Okay? So if you have that, please feel free to call in at 888-874-4888, and I'll be happy to address that. Now, I have another segment here that I want to share with you. This is in the crisis in the world's fisheries. And you can watch this by going to you go to youtube.com/PRNFM, youtube.com/PRNFM. It's very interesting to watch. It's a short segment, but for those who eat fish, maybe you should consider veganism because this is a real eye-opener. We'll go to the film.
Special report looking at the crisis in the world's fisheries. The United Nations says 90% of them have collapsed, and the Chinese are the biggest culprits. By a long way, China has the world's largest deep-sea fishing fleet, including 2,600 mega trawlers stripping the ocean floor. They're helping to satisfy China's insatiable appetite for seafood. The Chinese eat more than a third of the world's fish supplies. And despite tough new laws to help ensure stock, there are serious concerns about how long that can be sustained. China correspondent Matthew Carney reports.
The fishing season has opened on the eastern coast of China. The fleet in Zhoushan is on the move. 500 trawlers will head deeper into the oceans this year and stay out for longer. Each season is getting harder. The seas have virtually no fish. But the commercial fleet is growing, with an estimated 200,000 boats, accounting for nearly half of the world's fishing. Captain Lin Jiancheng is a fisherman born and bred and says times are tough.
When I started to fish, we could fill our boats completely in an hour. There were fish everywhere. Now there are less fish and it's rare to get a big one.
Most of the catch now is trash fish, tiny specimens with little value, used as feed for animals and in aqua farms. Like most others here, the only thing keeping the captain and his crew afloat are government subsidies.
Fixing the boat cost me $40,000. The government subsidises that.
The subsidies might be keeping them in jobs, but overfishing is threatening the entire ecosystem. And Captain Wan Dong has an even bigger complaint. He says China's mega trawlers, and there's 2,600 of them, are making it almost impossible to survive.
Their fish nets kill everything. The mega trawlers have bigger engines, so when they pass, there are hardly any fish left.
The government says it's taking action. At least with the smaller fleets, it can control closer to home.
We're extending fishing bans, releasing more baby fish and starting to reduce the number of boats.
But authorities acknowledge they're having difficulty with the Chinese mega trawlers on the high seas. They often underreport or don't record their catches. China's mega trawlers are targeting the seas in the Northwest Pacific, South America and Western Africa. Not only are they destroying fish stocks, but also wiping out poorer, subsistent communities.
In West Africa, 7 million people are relying on fish for income and employment, and many millions more are relying on fish for food, for the animal protein.
Last year, tough laws and tough punishments were put in place to try and control China's deep-sea fishing fleets. But they're difficult to enforce, and some experts say too little, too late to save the world's fish stocks. In Zhoushan, the first catches of the season have come in. It looks like a good haul of crabs, but total catches are well under half of previous years. Conservationists say if China and other countries don't change their fishing models, there'll be little left for the next generation. Matthew Carney.
So there you have it. What we're saying is that if we move to a plant-based diet, we're going to help our bodies, because virtually all the science shows that a healthy plant-based clean diet allows you to live much longer, and that's important. Additionally, you're saving on the carbon footprint, because if you're growing things locally, and I hope you are, supporting your farmers markets, and the future is hydroponics. That's the future. If you're smart on this issue, you'll get out of the cities, you'll get into an environment, hopefully with some other people, into an intentional community, and they're doing that all over the world, by the way, and each person brings their gifts, each person brings their talents. Don't bring your drama. That'll destroy a community. It'll absolutely destroy it. It's like a virus on a computer. So spend some time getting to know the people before you invite them to join you. But when you get the right mix of people, and then you look around this wonderful, beautiful country that we have, and some other countries as well, you'll find good places that you can buy land inexpensively, and then construct your own ideal environment. You know, I would suggest building into the side of hills overlooking beautiful vistas, hobbit houses. You could have a magnificent hobbit house, and you're protected against hurricanes and flooding and tornadoes and adverse weather, and you can actually do a hydroponic garden inside a hobbit house. In fact, I'm going to be doing it. I'm building a hobbit house just to show what is possible. And I'm also doing a couple hobbit houses just for some veterans. I'm opening up in the next 3 months my veterans village for homeless vets. They're coming for free. I'm paying for it so they can, over a 6-month period, get their health back and be able to return to a productive society and their family. But in any case, this is something that you should be considering. So you get out of the cities, you get out of the congestion, you get out of the high rents, you get out of the crime, you get out of all the negativity, And you can still stay connected with the internet to the culture. That doesn't go away. That's not hidden. You can be anywhere and enjoy that. So just a suggestion for you. Now, we also have here, but get away from eating animal protein, because then you don't have to pay a carbon footprint to get something that was fished in, just imagine, fished in the South Pacific, brought on those trawlers to a port, then driven by truck clear across the United States. You could be talking about 10 to 15,000 miles. That's a huge carbon footprint. That's like buying Fiji water. Why in the hell would anyone with a brain buy something that takes so long to get it to where you're from point A to point B, where it was harvested, when we've got, most states have their own mineral water and you could get it locally? Why? Because it's marketed? But look at what it's costing. And so your health improves, the health of the planet improves, and also then under your control you can begin to grow things that outside. You can grow different types of shrubs and trees and bushes and hedges. All of that contributes to carbon sinking, meaning drawing carbon out of the air into the root system. So, very important. That's the future. But fisheries, no. And China's the number one polluter in the world, and it's got the number one population in the world, about 100,000 more than, 100 million more than India. They're up almost close to 1.4 billion people, and right behind them is India. Between China and India, they're massively polluting. They've destroyed the quality of their water. They don't have fertile soil any longer, and hence they're on these massive appropriations of land around the world. And that frequently means throwing off the cultural heritage of what had created that land and nurtured the land, and getting in genetically engineered food. So if anyone is thinking that somehow our technology will save us from global warming's tipping points, you're wrong, because the leading power structures, both corporate and government, are working in collusion together, and none of those people are going to do anything that's to our betterment. So you're on your own. Just be aware of it, okay? Also, I'm going to play you a few minutes of the following. I want to play you a little bit on this autism. I'm going to start this. This is by Wendy Chung. I think you'll find it of interest. What you know and don't know about autism.
Speak, who communicates by using an iPad to touch pictures to communicate his thoughts and his concerns. A little boy who, when he gets upset, will start rocking, and eventually, when he's disturbed enough, will bang his head to the point that he can actually cut it open and require stitches. That same diagnosis of autism, though, also applies to Gabriel, another 13-year-old boy who has quite a different set of challenges. He's actually quite remarkably gifted in mathematics. He can multiply 3 numbers by 3 numbers in his head with ease. Yet when it comes to trying to have a conversation, he has great difficulty. He doesn't make eye contact. He has difficulty starting a conversation, feels awkward. And when he gets nervous, he actually shuts down. Yet both of these boys have the same diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. One of the things that concerns us is whether or not there really is an epidemic of autism. These days, 1 in 88 children will be diagnosed with autism. And the question is, why does this graph look this way? Has that number been increasing dramatically over time? Or is it because we have now started labeling individuals with autism, simply giving them the diagnosis when they were still present there before, yet simply didn't have that label? And in fact, in the late 1980s, the early 1990s, legislation was passed that actually provided individuals with autism with resources, with access to educational materials that would help them. With that increased awareness, more parents, more pediatricians, more educators learned to recognize the features of autism. As a result of that, more individuals were diagnosed and got access to the resources they needed. In addition, we've changed our definition over time. And so, in fact, we've widened the definition of autism, and that accounts for some of the increased prevalence that we see. The next question everyone wonders is, what caused autism? And a common misconception is that vaccines cause autism. But let me be very clear. Vaccines do not cause autism.
Okay. This was a TED Talk. This is a highly respected person. And you saw with the emphasis that this vaccines do not cause autism. Now, if a person were open-minded, then they would ask people, including physicians and scientists and professors of immunology, toxicology, to share their points of view, in which case we would be able to present dozens of documents, scientific documents from peer-reviewed literature showing vaccines do cause autism. In fact, all this person had to do was go to the federal government, Justice Department's vaccine compensation program and find out that 61 people have been paid money by the federal government because of mental problems, neurological problems, including autism, specifically identified as autism. So how is it that a person with such certainty has such a public forum to say with absolute belief that vaccines don't cause autism, and yet we have methodically showed that it does? In fact, the federal government's own CDC in 2001 through 2004 did one of the most comprehensive studies ever on the MMR vaccine. And with the MMR vaccine, it was shown that there was a 224% increase in the risk of autism in African-American boys 36 months and younger. And that was hidden from the public. But it's been known for some time that that exists. Copies of that William Thompson's actual statements over a phone to Dr. Brian Hooker was recording him prove that. A legislator from Florida named Posey read his statements into the congressional record, which means that it's officially a record of Congress anyone could access, that shows, yes, the CDC, its entire department on vaccines, clear up to Judy Gerberding, the head of the CDC, who would later go to work for Merck, the very makers of the MMR vaccine, have shown that they proved this. They were afraid of the consequences. They did everything they could to cover it up and hide it, and they did so. But it proved that it existed, and they have never been brought before Congress under oath to make that statement or to show their records, because he still has a copy of the records that weren't destroyed. Other copies were. That's obstruction of justice, by the way. That's a felony. That's a crime. And the fact you're a government agent engaged in that does not mean that you are indemnified. It's just they won't get them before Congress because nobody in the pharmaceutical industry wants the truth to come out. So instead of the truth coming out so we could be informed and have freedom of choice, we're given information that is just the opposite of the truth. That's why I said earlier in the program, who do you believe? Think of all the people watching that TED Talk who are going to believe what this person says without questioning it, because of the authority that that person brings to the discussion, her background and academic credentials. And yet I could give her many documents, including articles that are really good scholarship articles. Would she read them? Would she want to read them? Would she want a truth other than her own? That's why I had Lara Logan's comments earlier about who do we believe? That's why I ask you a question, because think of how many times a day you take for granted that whoever is presenting something is doing so first objectively. Is anything given about any of the living people who are profiled on Wikipedia on health? Are they objective? Absolutely not. How would you know they're not objective unless you did the 2 years of investigative reporting we have done? The average person is just going to believe it, but you shouldn't believe it. But how would you know otherwise? You wouldn't. Therefore, you'd be taking in misinformation, believing that homeopathy, chiropractic, naturopathy, that body-mind medicine, meditation, yoga, these are all quackery. But they're not quackery. We have hundreds of thousands of studies in the peer-reviewed literature supporting the alternative approach and safety. They have just the opposite. They have the number one cause of death in American injury is iatrogenesis or medically induced. And if you look over the last 40 years, they've been responsible for upwards of 20 million Americans dying needlessly. Well, if you kill 20 million people needlessly, isn't that medical genocide? Shouldn't someone in academia, someone in medicine, someone in the media, someone in Congress care about that? Evidently not, because we sent thousands of copies of our article, Death by Medicine, out to every major scientific journal. Not a single person responded to it. They simply did not want anyone to realize that it even existed. As a result, a very small audience was aware of it. But at least those who are aware of it are less likely to become victims of it. So think of all the people who told you with absolute certainty statins save lives and high cholesterol is a number one contributor to heart disease risk. But it's not true. We have hundreds of things we believe in that we accept and take for granted that are inviolate, that are wrong. So what we try to do here is to balance that out and share with you a more honest and accurate picture of what is true. Finally, very quickly, we have expanded our upcoming anti-aging clinical trial. This is the last one I'll be doing, but this is to verify the first one was correct. You have to have a gold standard, in other words, to get complete legitimacy. We're doing two ways. One group are going to be on campus for 60 days in a beautiful environment. I will be there. And the other is people will be doing it from their homes. But again, and we have ways of monitoring it, and we will be every day for 60 days. They're going to be given both the same identical protocols, and we hope that the results are the same for both. I doubt it, but we hope so. That'll be determined by how determined a person's discipline is for a person to really stick with the protocols. If you want to be a part of that, you can call Luann Panesi at 903-881-7008. 903-881-7008. I don't know if she has any more room for people to be on campus, but you can ask her. Anyhow, it's the same protocols for two different groups. You can choose which you'd like and call her 903-881-7008. We should be filled up by this weekend, and we have a lot of preparation to do. It's a very exciting time. It's never been done. I read you the comments at the beginning of the program, so I look forward to hearing from Luann that it's all full. And we're ready to go. 903-881-7008 if you want to see if you can reverse, stop, or improve your aging process. And now for something very important and very different, something that is not discussed virtually ever in the mainstream media. All of the excessive medication given to both children and adults, especially those who are diagnosed with some form of mental condition, the bipolar conditions, schizophrenia conditions, the hyperanxiety, depression, etc. Are they needed? Dr. Peter Breggin, a board-certified psychiatrist, former member of a research group at the National Institutes of Health, says no, they are not needed. Years ago, I did a documentary. It was called The Drugging of Our Children. I'm doing a new documentary. I've been working on it for about 3 years, called Manufacturing Madness. And in it, I have simply asked two questions. Do we need these medications, these very powerful drugs, if we're suffering from what would be considered under normal circumstances the way we deal with life? Sometimes we're happier or sad. Sometimes we're more anxious or distressed. Other times we're not. Is this a brain chemical imbalance? These are addressed. And it's important that we hear from Dr. Breggin. Now, Dr. Peter Breggin.
This is Dr. Peter Breggin, and this is another in my Simple Truths about psychiatry. And the subject today is that psychiatric drugs are much, much more dangerous than you've ever been led to believe by the doctors who are prescribing them. I genuinely believe that if most people knew how dangerous the psychiatric drugs really were, most people would never start on them. And I also believe that if most prescribers had even the faintest idea how dangerous they were, they'd stop prescribing them. Well, how is it
that so many people can be ignorant about psychiatric drugs? Well, the truth is because they're all getting their information from the drug companies. I mean, when was the last time you saw a car company leap up to tell people way in advance that they'd had some deaths on the road from their bad brakes? When was the last time the car companies went mea culpa and said, yes, our accelerators are sticking and running people down? Well, I can tell you the drug companies are even worse. They go to all kinds of extremes to avoid letting you know and letting your doctor know how dangerous the drugs are. I know this because I've been a medical expert in dozens of lawsuits against drug companies. I've looked inside drug companies and seen what they're really doing. I was appointed by a court in Indiana to be the scientific expert for over 150 lawsuits against Eli Lilly, suits alleging that the drug Prozac had caused violence, suicide, mayhem, mania, and psychosis. So I know what goes inside. I know as much as anyone about how dangerous the drugs are. So let me just give you a little brief outline of material you can find in the first half of my book, Psychiatric Drug Withdrawal. Obviously, the second half is intended to help you come off psychiatric drugs, because it can be very dangerous to come off drugs. It's dangerous and sometimes more than starting the drugs. Let's take a look at the stimulants that you may be taking as a college student or as a parent that you may be giving to your children. Follow-up studies on people who were started on stimulants as children show that they have shrinkage of brain tissue, measurable on brain scans. They have reduced height and weight. They're being incarcerated more often than other people. They're going to mental hospitals more often. Their suicide rate is increased. Every single one of these facts documented by follow-up studies of what happens to you if you get started on stimulants. And one particularly well-done study, the rate of cocaine abuse is greater when you become a young man or woman if you've been put on stimulants as a child. That's because the stimulant drugs, such as Ritalin and Concerta and Adderall and Dexedrine, they're so similar to cocaine in their effects. All right, let's look at another group, the sedative, sleeping pills that you're taking, like Sonata and Ambien, any one of the prescription sedatives used for sleep. We now got 2 or more good studies showing they shorten lifespan. You can Google them. You can Google practically anything I'm telling you, but you'll get more accurate and direct data from psychiatric drug withdrawal. Now, what about the benzodiazepines, the tranquilizers like Xanax and Valium and Ativan and Klonopin? They're very addictive. You know that people taking Xanax in controlled clinical trials, after a mere 6 weeks, a large percentage can't get off. After a mere 6 weeks, they become addicts to Xanax. Great for the drug business, great for your psychiatrist or prescriber who just wants to write prescriptions. Terrible for you. These drugs now, several studies show, like Xanax and Ativan, they're causing shrinkage of the brain too. Coming off them can be an absolute horror story. It can be harder to get off those drugs than to get off opiates. They leave people who try to come off of them with horrendous insomnia, horrendous anxiety, aches and pains in their body, such pain in their feet that they can't stand up, that it's just too much pain, weird feelings throughout their body, and then the realization as they come off that their minds aren't working as well, that they have memory loss for the past and have more trouble learning. Now, I know this is hard. You know, it's hard for me to even talk about it, but it's really time to face up to just how dangerous these drugs are. So we've looked at the stimulants and the sleeping pills and the benzos. Now the antipsychotic drugs, which are not really antipsychotic drugs, they're just lobotomizing drugs that are being given to some people for sleep, like Seroquel is being given to people for sleep, and Abilify and Latuda and Risperidone, Zyprexa, all of these drugs are very damaging to the brain. They virtually wreck a part of the brain called the basal ganglia. They cause a dreadful disorder, tardive dyskinesia. I've done a whole Simple Truth video about tardive dyskinesia. They're shortening the lifespan. We have evidence that people who are put on a lifetime dose of these antipsychotic drugs for whatever reason, whether it's to help you sleep at night or because that you're hallucinating and have a lot of problems, 20 years shortened lifespan.
Have a nice day, everyone. Now get ready for Utrecht Lead.